There are stories that give us goosebumps, not because they are fantasy, but because they carry such a raw human truth that they become impossible to ignore. This is one of them. And maybe, just maybe, it touches a wound that you have, hidden even from yourself. How many promises have you made with your heart in pieces, swearing to keep them, even without knowing how? Promises that are born in the thread of life, between the last breath and the first cry of longing? Well, yes. A son heard from his mother, on her deathbed, words that would change everything. A request that could not fit in time, a secret too heavy to be revealed, and yet impossible to ignore. But be careful, this is not just another sad farewell story. This one will sweep you off your feet, because over the years, this man discovered that the promise he made was like an invisible map, guiding his steps through alleys of the soul that he did not even know existed. With each clue, a mystery, with each discovery, a pain, and with each choice, a fork in the road between forgiveness and resentment, between love and the abyss. Get ready to question what you understand by family, by truth, by legacy. Because what seemed like a simple request, in fact, hid decades of silence, crossed out names, ghost towns, encrypted letters, and a key. A single key. That would open something. That would change not only his life, but everything he believed about his own origins. And you know what else? Maybe you will discover at the end of this story that some promises are not made to be kept. They are made to transform us. In the darkness of that stuffy room, where time seemed to have stopped and the air carried the bittersweet smell of goodbyes, a mother whispered something in her son's ear. No one else heard. Not the nurse who changed the sheets with hands that trembled with emotion, nor the older sister who cried silently in the corner of the peeling wall. Only him, and it was as if the whole world fell silent at that moment, so that those words, soft and broken, would be eternalized within him. She said what he would never dare to repeat out loud. It was a mixture of mystery and emotion, wrapped in a last look full of affection and wisdom, as if asking, and with all the strength of love and trust, that he never forget. It was more than a request. It was a sacred mission. And at that moment, even without understanding, he accepted. He accepted with a torn soul between tears and silence, driven by a feeling greater than fear, the hope of honoring that woman who, until the last second, taught with kindness, humility, and the serene strength of understanding. During the following days, the boy, now a man with a broken heart, felt the echo of that whisper resounding inside his chest like a silent drum. He tried to live normally, but there was a restlessness that would not let up. What he had heard made no sense at that moment, but it seemed to contain a secret, a request greater than himself, greater than any immediate understanding. His mother's absence was cutting, a kind of loneliness that hurt his bones, but at the same time brought with it a mysterious, almost spiritual presence, as if she were still there, watching, waiting. And with that, a spark of perseverance emerged in him, of a courage he did not know he had. Little by little, he began to understand that the power of kindness resides in the promises made out of love, out of respect for the memory of the one who gave us everything, including life itself. He felt moved every time he remembered her last look, which seemed to say, "You know what to do, you just don't know that you know it yet." Ursu. And then the years began to pass, like leaves carried by the wind. Time, that silent sculptor, was shaping within him a gentle but firm force. The promise made in a whisper became his guiding light. In every gesture of kindness, in every act, self-compassion, in every attempt to reconcile with the past, he carried that mission. There were moments when he doubted, when insecurity took over and his mother's voice seemed distant. But then something happened, a memory, a smell, a song, and everything was rekindled. He understood that certain words are not just said, they are sown, and they grow like trees within the soul, even when the rain of sadness threatens to destroy them. He became, without realizing it, a guardian of something greater. And what was pain, little by little transformed into inspiration. But what exactly had she asked for? What did that mean? It was time to seek answers. It was time to open the door to the impossible. The memory of that whisper was no longer just a memory. It was a living spark, burning silently and demanding to be fulfilled. The promise that the mother had made her son hear on his deathbed was not trivial. She had asked him to find someone, a person shrouded in shadows, missing for decades, whom no one dared to speak of. Or perhaps it was about something even darker, a secret, a fragment of the family's past, buried under layers of silence, guilt, and misunderstood respect. Since then, that man began to carry the weight of an eternal duty, the kind that infiltrates the soul like a silent oath. And amidst the doubt, the insecurity, and the fear, a certainty grew. The promise had to be fulfilled, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how impossible it seemed, because true love demands sacrifice. And because souls that understand the power of kindness know there are promises that cannot be broken. Never. The questions began to multiply like broken mirrors. Who was this person? Why did they disappear? Why did no one talk about them anymore? Every time he tried to ask the family, silence was the only answer. A thick, almost violent silence, as if that name were cursed. But his mother, she had entrusted him with this mission, and trust is a profound form of affection, a form of love, of humanity. And so, even without concrete clues, he decided to search. He began by rummaging through the city's old archives, yellowed magazines, documents that lay forgotten at the bottom of moldy boxes. He talked to old neighbors, to old ladies with tired eyes and restless memories. Some kept quiet, others blurted out fragments of stories that didn't add up. Each answer came with a new mystery. The only constant was the compassion he felt for everyone, because even without knowing it, everyone seemed hurt by the past. And what do you do when faced with so many wounds, if not offer kindness? There were days when he thought about giving up. Loneliness was a constant companion, and discouragement whispered in his mind with a cruel voice. But in those moments, he remembered his mother's gaze, that last gaze. It was as if she still guided him with her wisdom, as if she knew he would stumble, fall, but would get up. Because she knew the son she had. She knew his capacity for resilience, his perseverance, and so when all seemed lost, he discovered an unexpected clue, a name scratched on the back of a photograph, kept inside an old book. The name was familiar and strange at the same time. A name he had heard at some distant moment, like an echo. And in that moment, the weight of the promise intensified. Something much greater was hidden there. The search had only just begun. But now, there was something tangible, something real, something that throbbed with the heat of truth. It was on a cloudy Sunday, one of those days when the wind seems to blow memories through the cracks in the windows, that he decided to revisit his childhood home. The house where his mother's laughter still seemed to echo between the worn walls, and the wooden floor creaked, as if it wanted to tell forgotten stories. He went up to the attic, carrying a silent courage, the kind that is born of longing mixed with hope. And there, among old toys, sepia portraits, and the sweet smell of mold and memories, he found an old trunk. The wood was cracked, covered in dust and cobwebs, but something in that object pulsed. When he opened it, he felt a shiver run down his spine. There were letters there, many of them, handwritten by his mother, dated decades ago, some addressed to crossed-out names, others with symbols, codes, and instructions that defied all logic. It was as if she were speaking to him from beyond. And at that moment, emotion took over him completely. Each letter was a fragment of her soul. Some contained sweet words full of affection, respect, and tenderness. Others carried anguish, fear, insecurity, as if she had lived divided between duty and silence. But all of them, without exception, pointed to something hidden, a truth that she herself had not had time to reveal. There was one letter in particular where she mentioned the city that disappeared. The phrase was strongly underlined, like a suppressed cry. There were also hand-drawn maps, crossed-out locations, notes in Latin, and even a warning. Not everything should be remembered, but you will know when the time is right. He felt that this was more than a clue. It was a call, a continuation of the promise. And at that moment he was overcome by a strange gratitude for having been chosen, for being able to know who his mother really was. Not the woman who only held his lap and cooked hot food, but the woman made of courage, altruism, and secrets. With each envelope he opened, he delved deeper, not only into his mother's story, but into his own. He began to notice connections between the letters and childhood memories, a name he had once heard whispered in conversations, a face that appeared in dreams without explanation, a place that attracted him for no reason. It was as if she had prepared everything in advance, with a silent wisdom, trusting in her son's resilience. In one of the letters, she wrote, "I didn't leave you answers. I left you paths." And that was it. Life at that point was no longer routine, it was an adventure, an emotional labyrinth where the key was the heart itself. He knew he was on the threshold of something greater. He knew he was getting closer and closer to a truth that could change everything, including himself. And without realizing it, he was no longer just looking for answers. He was looking for reconciliation, for forgiveness, for redemption. And the next step would take him to a place that no longer existed, or so they said. He arrived at the village on a grey morning, one of those when the sky seems to hesitate between rain or just watching. The name of the town, scratched out in one of his mother's letters, no longer appeared on any map, nor in digital systems. It was as if it had been erased from the collective memory, like a secret kept under lock and key. And yet, it existed, hidden between mountains and dense fog, with narrow streets, old buildings, and a silence that weighed on the shoulders. The first thing he noticed was the look on the residents' faces. It wasn't hostility. It was fear. Fear disguised as kindness, as if every word exchanged was observed by invisible eyes. Even without knowing anyone, he felt like he was already part of that place. There was a silent understanding there, as if everyone knew why. He was there but chose to remain silent. Loneliness was knocking on the door, but with it perseverance, because those who carry a promise made by love in their hearts do not back down from the unknown. Walking through the alleys, he noticed details that would escape less attentive eyes. Signs with names scratched out, doors locked with old padlocks, eyes that looked away at the slightest visual contact. He tried to talk to the older people, offering words full of sincerity and humility. Many smiled, but no one spoke of the past, until a white-haired woman with a choked voice handed him a cup of tea and said, "You are the son of the woman with the medallion, aren't you?" His heart stopped for a moment. She had known his mother. She said nothing more. She simply pointed to an isolated house at the end of the street. "Go there, but go with courage." Her tone carried the strength of veiled truth, and that was enough. He felt that the city was hiding something that could shake everything he knew. And yet there was a strange sense of hope there, as if he was exactly where he needed to be at the exact time, guided by something that transcended chance. Upon arriving at the indicated house, he noticed that it was abandoned but not empty. There were traces of presence, footprints, clean objects, windows discreetly ajar. Everything there spoke, even if in whispers. The city, which no one remembered, was beginning to show itself. But to whom and why? The answer seemed increasingly linked to the name that had never been told, to the secret that his mother had so wanted to protect, but also to reveal. He understood, with the wisdom that only time grants, that certain secrets exist not to be unveiled immediately, but to be understood at the right time. And with that came a new weight, but also a new light. Because each step taken in that city was in fact a step towards himself. And even though fear lurked, trust guided him. He was about to discover more than he was looking for. He was about to find a name or a story that would change his life forever. The abandoned house seemed to whisper secrets through its cracked walls. The air there smelled of a muffled past, of stories suspended in time. As he walked through the rooms, he felt like someone reading a book without pages, but with feelings engraved in the cracks in the wood. It was there, among pictures covered by sheets and a jammed closet, that he found a diary. Not his mother's, but someone's who seemed to be writing about her. The pages, yellowed and fragile, revealed an intense relationship, marked by affection, and pain by love and absence. And at the end of one of them, scribbled with ink that seemed to resist time, was a name he had never heard at home, a name his mother had never said. As he read it, he felt a lump in his throat. It seemed wrong and right at the same time, as if he had finally found a missing piece, but didn't know where to fit it. And then came the question that would throb for days. Who was this man? That name, now branded like a hot iron in his memory, became an obsession. He turned over documents, searched registry offices, interviewed residents of the city, each one more reluctant than the last. No one confirmed anything, but their looks spoke volumes. There was compassion in them, but also fear. And the more he insisted, the clearer it became. That name was tied to his identity in a way that no one dared reveal. Was it a lost brother, a hidden father, a forbidden love, or all at once? The possibilities shook him, and with them, the insecurity and pain of doubt. But along with the pain also came understanding. Sometimes silence is the shield of those who have been hurt. And his mother. Perhaps she kept quiet, not out of weakness, but out of protection. He began to see the history of his own family with different eyes, more human eyes. And there something rare blossomed. Forgiveness. For everything that had been omitted, for everything that was hidden under the veil of fear. The name began to appear in other places, engraved on the back of a faded photo, scribbled on a sealed envelope that was never sent, mentioned in a note hidden inside a book of poems. It was as if the universe conspired for him to see it and understand it. More than a person, that name carried an entire past, and the hardest part was realizing that perhaps his own existence was connected to that mystery, that his identity, his choices, even his traumas, were all intertwined in that silence. But instead of running away, he took a deep breath and accepted the journey. Because when you carry an oath made with love, you need to have resilience to face even the scariest things. And so, he decided to return to his childhood home. There was something there that still called to him, a door that had never been opened, one that deep down he had always avoided. But now he knew he had to go through. After all, some truths only appear when we are ready to see them. It was a discreet door, painted the same color as the walls of the back room, almost as if someone wanted it to be forgotten. During his childhood, he had heard stories that there was only an old closet with moldy clothes there. But the truth is that no one had ever opened it. Not his mother, not his brothers, not even himself. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of respect for the silence of the house. Now, with his heart beating faster than normal, he stood in front of it. The doorknob was cold, covered in dust and rust, and as he turned it, he felt a shiver that came not only from his spine, but from his soul. The door gave way with a dull creak, revealing a small, low-ceilinged room where time seemed to have stopped. In the center, a wooden box, surrounded by torn photos and yellowed diaries, rested as if it held the very heart of that story. There was also an object, strange, wrapped in fabric embroidered with Latin letters. When he touched it, he knew nothing would be the same again. The photos scattered on the floor showed faces he didn't recognize, but felt familiar. One of them was the woman with the locket, the same one in the photo he had found years before, the one who wasn't his mother, but who bore the same symbol. In the diaries, there were descriptions of secret meetings, repeated names, including the name that had never been said, and mentions of a pact made between sisters. The mother's compassion overflowed from those pages, but also a deep pain, a silent struggle between truth and duty. She had written in shaky letters, "There are truths that free and others that tear. That's why I hid it." At that moment, he understood. The object wrapped in it was the symbolic key to that whole plot, a reliquary, inside a lock of hair, a wedding ring, and a note with a single sentence, "Forgive me, my son." The ground seemed to disappear beneath his feet. The pain of the revelation was intense, but with it came something greater, the chance for reconciliation, the chance to heal not only his soul but his past. There, kneeling among the remains of what was and what would never be, he cried, not out of sadness, but out of liberation. That mother who always seemed strong and serene was also human, made of difficult choices, mistakes made out of love, out of fear, out of hope. And then, in that intimate moment, he did something that few do. He chose forgiveness. Not the easy, automatic kind, but the profound kind, the kind that comes from the understanding that even those we love can make mistakes, and that this does not diminish their greatness. There was a hidden wisdom there, an inspiration born from pain. That reliquary was not just an object, it was a symbol of what life really is, imperfect, chaotic, but full of chances for a new beginning. When he closed the door, he took the reliquary with him and a new mission. There was someone else in this story, the woman in the portrait, and perhaps the hardest truth was yet to come. She looked at him from the portrait with disconcerting intensity. She didn't smile, but she didn't convey sadness either. It was as if her eyes spoke a forgotten language, from which emanated a mixture of hope, loneliness, and something that could only be described as longing. The medallion hung from her neck exactly like the one he now carried in his pocket. It wasn't a superficial resemblance, it was the same object, and that was enough to know there was a deep connection between that woman and his mother. But why was she never mentioned? Why were there no photos of her anywhere in the house? With each passing second, the mystery deepened, but a new desire to understand also emerged, not out of curiosity, but out of love. Love for his mother's story, love for his own identity, and for understanding, because he had already learned. Throughout his journey, that judging is easy. What's difficult is seeing with empathy. He decided to look for answers in old archives in the city. He rummaged through period photos, birth records, and forgotten obituaries. In a dusty corner of the local library, he found a news article dated 1963. Young woman disappears after scandal involving traditional family. And there she was, the woman in the portrait, with the same look that seemed to span decades. Beside her, a surname that coincided with his mother's, but with an altered spelling. Was it a sister, a cousin, someone disowned for something that had remained hidden to this day? The people of the town, as always, kept to themselves, but a former employee of the family, now over 80 years old, stammered through tears. They were inseparable, even the secret. And that was it. A sentence and a silence that said more than words. He understood that something very serious had happened, something that involved impossible choices, and he realized what he was looking for was not just truth, it was reconciliation. It was a chance to bring together the parts that were separated by shame, fear, and the insecurity of being who you are. Once again, he thought about giving up, but something was driving him. Courage. The same courage his mother had had to leave clues, the same courage the woman in the portrait probably had had to face the world, even if that world had decided to forget her. And there, among notebooks, reports, and scribbles, he understood. They had made a pact, and the locket was the symbolic key to it. A promise to never let the other be forgotten, even if everything conspired against it. He held the object tightly, and silently made the same promise. He would honor that story. He would give a name to the nameless woman, a face to the memory without a story, because that is also love, because that is also justice. And in doing so, he felt that he was closer to his mother than ever, but there was still an untold part, a document, a hidden truth, and that was when he received the call. A lawyer, his voice thick with surprise, said that there was a will, never delivered. The call came on a normal afternoon, like so many others, but it carried the weight of a contained storm. The lawyer, in a hesitant voice, said, "Sir, there is an old will left by your mother that was never delivered for reasons I cannot explain over the phone." His heart raced. Will? But why had he never heard about it? Why had no one said anything all these years? He went to the office indicated, an old building in the city center, where the furniture still smelled of leather and yellowed paper. Upon arriving, he was greeted with respect, but also with strangeness. The lawyer, an elderly man with a look full of memories, revealed that the will had been filed for over 30 years. It had never been opened. It had never been read. "It was a request from your mother," he said, "but what intrigues me is that she left instructions for it to be delivered to you when it was ready." Ready. The word echoed. How did she know? And what did it mean to be ready? The envelope was thick, sealed with red wax. As he tore it open, his hands were shaking. Inside was a letter, handwritten, in the same soft, firm, loving handwriting as his mother. It began with a sentence that disarmed him. "If you are reading this, it is because you have done your part of the journey." Silent tears flowed. She told him about her sister, about the pacts, about the choices she had to make between what was right and what was possible. She revealed that the woman in the portrait was indeed part of the family, that she had been estranged because of an out-of-wedlock pregnancy, a scandal by the standards of the time, and that to protect her, her mother had taken on a pain that was not hers alone. She wrote about the weight of silence, about the love she felt for all parties involved, about the guilt she carried. But above all, she spoke of hope. Hope that one day he would understand, that he would have compassion, that he would not only forgive her, but that he would find the strength to forgive everyone, and perhaps himself. Along with the letter was a legal document, half of an inheritance left to someone whose name he had never heard, the same name that had been scrawled in the letters, in the diary, in the photos. The other half was for him. She wanted them to meet, to get to know each other, to rebuild together what life had tried to erase. It was his mother's final attempt to sew up the loose ends of the story, with tenderness, wisdom, and a deep trust in the power of kindness. He felt for the first time that it all made sense, that the suffering had not been in vain, that the promise had a reason for being. But something was still missing. The last piece, the key, literally, that would unlock the last mystery. And as if destiny had accompanied every step of his journey, it was about to appear. Because those who choose to live with honesty, courage, and an open heart inevitably find the truth, even when it changes everything they thought they knew. It was there, as if it had always been there, but only now was it seen. A small bronze key, aged by time, attached to the false bottom of the reliquary. For years, he had not even suspected that there was something hidden there. And yet, it made sense. Everything led to it. The will, the woman in the portrait, the letters, the silences, the pains and the looks that never said what they felt. That key was more than an object. It was a symbol of ending and beginning. But what would it open? It was too small for a common safe. It had a peculiar, ancient shape, like something forged not only in metal, but in memories. When he held it, he felt a strange energy, almost as if he were holding his own mother's hand, a connection made of compassion, altruism, and gratitude. It was time to use it. But use it where? He remembered a detail in the letters, a phrase that had always intrigued him. "What you seek is kept where the eyes rest, but the hearts beat faster." It was then that he remembered the bench in the old church where his mother used to sit, a forgotten building on the outskirts of the city that no one remembered. The place had always had something sacred, but now it seemed to carry a new meaning. When he got there, he sat exactly where she used to sit. He ran his hand under the seat and felt a protrusion, a secret compartment. The key fit as if it were part of him. The click echoed like a whisper of acceptance. Inside, a small case wrapped in blue velvet. When he opened it, he found a roll of microfilm along with another letter, short, direct, almost a warning. "If you choose to see what is here, know that there is no going back. But there is liberation." Fear arose, inevitable. But so did courage, the same courage of those who love, of those who forgive, of those who want finally to understand. He took the microfilm to an archivist friend. The contents were surprising. Medical records, letters from his father, unsent confessions. Everything was changing, everything. The truth was deeper than he had imagined. The man he thought was his father wasn't. The woman in the portrait, his biological mother, the woman who raised him, his aunt, who chose, with all the love in the world, to raise him as her own. The pieces fit together like a puzzle made of pain, tenderness and decisions marked by courage and sacrifice. And in that moment he didn't cry. He smiled, a smile full of understanding, of respect, because he understood that behind every lie there was an attempt at protection. Behind every silence, a choice made with kindness. He didn't feel betrayed, he felt human. And more, he felt inspired by the strength of his real mother, by the compassion of his mother of the heart, and by the greatness of a legacy that now belonged entirely to him. But there was still one last act left. The promise finally was about to be fulfilled. All that was left was to decide whether to free the truth or protect it. The day was serene, almost too beautiful for the kind of truth that was about to be revealed. He sat in front of the old recorder, with the microfilm now digitized, the documents organized in folders, and his heart weighing more than it had ever weighed before. The promise had been fulfilled. He had found the missing woman, unearthed the family secret, rewritten an entire story with honesty and dedication. But the insistent question hammered in his mind. Was he really supposed to discover all of this? Looking into the eyes of his own daughter, now a teenager, he hesitated. Should he share it or not? Could the pain of the truth be greater than the comfort of ignorance? His mother knew that. She knew that the truth frees, but it can also destroy. And yet, she trusted him. Because this is true love, trusting even in difficult choices. He took a deep breath. He felt her presence there, like a light breath, like the affection that never died. Telling the story would be like turning the key to an entire destiny. The names revealed, the pain exposed, the old shames reenacted. He knew that his family would never be the same, that the image of his adoptive mother, the woman who raised him with kindness, wisdom, and perseverance, could be tarnished by those who did not understand the depth of what had been done. But he also knew that not telling would be a way of perpetuating the silence. And he had promised not to repeat the silence. He promised with his soul, not with his lips, just as his mother had promised to take care of him even if it meant hiding her own existence. And so with humility and restrained tears he decided to tell, to everyone, but with empathy, with compassion, with the humanity of someone who understands that life is made of glorious imperfections. He published a letter. He held a family meeting. He faced tough questions, emotional reactions, suspicious looks, and in each of them he chose to offer the power of kindness. The price of the promise was high. He lost ties, but he gained others. He rebuilt bridges, asked for forgiveness, granted forgiveness. He discovered that reconciliation is not an end point, but a starting point. That pain, when welcomed with respect, becomes a seed of wisdom. And that the truth, however devastating, is the only soil in which trust can be planted. His daughter, listening to everything in silence, hugged him tightly. She said, "Thank you for showing me who I am." And he understood that it was all worth it. Because the greatest legacy he left was not his name, nor his possessions, nor the story he revealed. It was the choice to live honestly, to no longer hide, to walk lightly even after going through the weight of the world. And so, as the sun set behind the mountains, he felt something rare, peace, and a voice, perhaps imaginary, perhaps not, whispered from the past. "Now you understand. Now we are free." But what if there was still something he didn't know? And now tell me, looking inside yourself with all possible honesty, how many unfulfilled promises do you carry inside? How many words have stuck in your throat due to fear, pride, insecurity? How many truths have you hidden believing you were protecting someone, when in fact you were just postponing your own freedom? This story is not just about a son and his mother. It is about all of us, about what we choose to remember and what we prefer to bury. It is about the courage to rummage through the past in search of a truth that will not always comfort us, but that can and will set us free. It is about the pain of loving imperfectly, about forgiveness that saves without needing to forget, and about the incredible ability we have to start over, even after losing everything. Because true power lies in those who choose reconciliation, even when their hearts still bleed. Now the question is, what are you going to do with all of this? Are you going to let this knowledge die on your cell phone screen, or are you going to allow it to become action, healing, and rewriting? What key is missing in your life? What is locked away inside, waiting for you to have the courage to open it? What does your story still need to reveal to you? If this story touched you in some way, if it made you remember someone, rethink your choices, or even want to change your life, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it, comment on it, talk to me. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here we will continue to unearth secrets, heal wounds, and build bridges where there were only walls. And I promise you, each new story will bring you even closer to your truth.